Oh, what have I done?
Yeah. There we go. The magic button. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah. So serverless imagery processing and with OpenDroneMap and AWS. So just an introduction to myself. My name's Yukio Chaplin. I have a background in conservation biology. And I've also been working as an environmental undergraduate up until now. At the moment, I'm a GIS intern at Winyama. And for the future, I think with environmental science and GIS, it's quite a symbiotic relationship, and it pretty much holds a nice future for myself. And then for River, just stand over here, bud.
So my background is in aviation and drone operations. I've only recently graduated from high school, and from there I graduated with a Certificate 3 in aviation and a remote pilot's license. I've only been working with Winyama for about coming up in 3 months now, and that was my first step, I guess, in my career. I was only working casual jobs during school, and I just intend on continuing my work with Winyama until I don't know.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of my life, yeah. Are you taking this?
Oh yeah, that's all right.
It's in your hand, mate.
Yeah, so I think we came across a few issues throughout throughout our ODM and AWS adventure, and so this is pretty much what we've had to live through so far. So the solution introduction. So ODM is a source toolkit for us that we use to process imagery. So it's taking images from drones, and also we've used it from iPhones and phone cameras, so any camera really, as inputs, and it outputs a variety of geo-reference assets, such as maps and 3D models. So traditionally, ODM is a command line toolkit, which you would download and install and then interact with through a series of commands. So the OpenDroneMap organization has also released some other products, such as Web ODM, which provides a web GUI, visualization, storage, and data analysis functionality. And for anybody who sort of wants to go and explore this route, there's a nice, lovely link there for you. So ODM imagery and processing challenges. So the ODM software itself can be installed and run locally. However, it does have a really high compute power or requirements. And so maintaining and running a dedicated server for ODM can also introduce a significant technical overhead and high infrastructure costs that aren't really feasible for small organizations and for personal use, I guess. So software as a service solutions are available. However, their subscription pricing models don't meet the once-off project-based imagery processing requirements. Cool. So why Winyama Drone Yard? So Winyama Drone Yard is serverless, so meaning that although servers are certainly involved, they are only created when required, and there's no maintenance or direct interaction required with these servers. So by using AWS and a serverless approach, the Winyama Drone Yard allows the users to pay for what they actually use, specifically the time where imagery processing is required and actively running. So the solution can be deployed to AWS using the simplest of computers and by anyone with just a baseline command knowledge. And that's pretty much what went through my brain the whole time with looking at this. What's you?
So I was asked to make a flow chart for how the process works. So it's a pretty good explanation, I think. We got the lovely Tim to do that for us. Thanks, mate. So, where can we start? So obviously you've got to capture your imagery for that. You can get that off of your SD card if you have a SIM reader in your laptop, or you can get fairly cheap USB attachments for that. None of this was planned, by the way. We're just winging it. Don't know if you noticed. Yeah, you can bring that over to your computer into S3, and that. Give me a second.
So we uploaded to S3.
It's uploaded to S3, yeah.
And then you run the
And then,
file.
yeah, you upload, do you trigger Lambda?
Yes.
You do, which creates a new job in AWS batch. Tim explained this to me literally earlier, and I forgot everything he said. Yeah, if you have questions about this, you can ask Tim after this. Thanks, Tim. Before you start doing this, there are some prerequisites. You need to have an AWS account that you can access to deploy the solution resources into. You'll need to have elevated access to your local computer or your development environment in order to install the necessary software required to deploy the solution. And you're also going to need internet access pretty much the whole time. A Windows environment is like suggested, but we haven't tested it on anything else, so just keep that in mind.
That's me, yes.
Yeah.
Again. So some prerequisites. So definitely we need to download and install a few things. So Git, Node Packet Manager, Docker Desktop, AWS command line interface, and the AWS CDK toolkit. And we also need to configure your AWS command line interface credentials. So we've been using, I guess it's an organizational version or something, but we did make a personal AWS account to basically show you guys exactly what's going on. And so you need to create an IAM user, retrieve the command line interface credentials from the IAM service in AWS. And our recommendation is to create two different accounts or two different IAM user, is to create two different IAM users, one with admin access to deploy the solution, and the other with just S3, specifically for interacting with your deployed S3 buckets. So we have some deployment steps here. So configure your AWS credentials. So this is also the command lines, if that helps. So yeah, run AWS configure, and then you would then go and clone your Winyama DroneYard repository from GitHub. So git clone, navigate to the root of clone repository or cd Winyama DroneYard in this case. Install node packages, so npm install. Bootstrap your AWS account for CDK bootstrap. Ensure Docker is running. We found that out quite a few times. Deploy resources to AWS, so CDK deploy require approval never. And deployment, so the deployment steps can also be found in the README file of the repository, if that helps. Very useful. And this is basically the entire time we were running some projects that never finished. So yeah, now that it's all working, hopefully we don't have to look like this anymore.
Is this you?
Yes, it is, but did you not just explain it?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, we're gonna run through it now with some visual GIFs and photos, if that helps.
Yeah, so so you'll have your AWS access keys. You should be able to find those in your account, and just make sure you set your region to AP Southeast 2, because that'll probably be your closest, most secure connection. Yep. And I clicked something. Okay. Yeah. What?
Oh yeah. The other thing is-
Oh yeah, it is.
So yeah, so we navigate in our command line to the command line client to where you want the clone to where you want to clone the repository dev. So you'd input your command, so git clone at this stage, along with the URL for the Winyama DroneYard repository. So I don't know if it's gone up. Yeah, so there you go, and that's what we want. And so then we would do our CDK bootstrap. So with the open the Winyama drone yard folder, CDK or CD Winyama drone yard, and run the CDK bootstrap. So it's yep, it's worked. And oh, look at that, it's going. And then again within Winyama drone yard, you'd run the CDK deploy, and this one is a big one, unfortunately. So there's quite a lot going on. Has it worked?
It's going.
Oh, it's gone.
It's going. There you go.
Oh, look at that. We'll skip to the next bit.
So excited.
But essentially, this is very long. So it'll spit out a lot for you. And then doing the running jobs now.
So a settings YAML file is going to basically set your settings for the job. So you can decide whether you're going to produce just an ortho photo or a 3D model, something like that. Yep, you keep it in your S3 bucket containing your jobs to like basically set a default settings. And then if you want to like set specific settings for a different job, you can add that file to your job folder. You can edit this file through any text editor, but Visual Studio Code is best practice for us. Just some simple navigation, just creating a project folder in your S3 bucket. Hurry up, mate. And you can see there, you've got it throughout all of your other, of course you have heaps of projects in there. It's pretty good. So to run a job, once you've uploaded your images to the folder, you add a dispatch file to the folder. The dispatch file is just an empty file named dispatch, which triggers your Lambda to start the job. I can see just making it there. Go. Oh, the GIFs are starting before we open the slide. That's annoying. That's fine. Yeah, this is just showing you how you can tell whether or not your dispatch has been successful. You can see that when you open batch. And this is just, it kind of outlines our entire experience for about a week. I think that was Tim's weekend at one point. Thanks, Tim. Alrighty. Extracting outputs. There's a couple ways to do this. My favorite is the recursive copy in the command line. Again, that gives us starting early, but this is good, yep. Run that code. You use the link from the S3 folder to, I know the words, they're just not in my brain. To do that, you have to do that in the target folder. So just make sure you are running it in the folder you actually want to download it to. And then an easier way is to use CyberDuck. This is going to access your S3 bucket like just via like kind of a file explorer, and you use that to download any of your projects. You can see there just going through an output folder, downloading it pretty quick. And this is one of our outputs. It's not super interesting, it's just a field, but it kind of gives you an idea of what the software can actually produce. You can use open source software called MeshLab to just view the 3D model outright. And you can also, if you download something like this is supposed to be here. If you've made an orthophoto, you can use those in QGIS with a TIFF file, and you can actually use that like on top of your base map so that you can have like an updated high quality view of your location. Do you want to take that?
Keep going. Love
What's your name, bud?
Yeah. I guess the same thing goes again with the viewing it in Google Earth Pro. So you can see it overlays. There's actually quite a nice updated imagery. Again, 3D, which is quite nice. And also for this data set, I don't think we never intended or didn't have any say over if it was going to be a good 3D data set. It was just a drone survey taken for some new-to-be pilots, let's say. And then as a side project, we also wanted to sort of 3D model ourselves in the workspace. So we did some full body ones, but unfortunately there was still a few gaps. And it's not perfect, but it still shows the power of it. Hand capture as well, yeah. So we used our phones as well. So we were just sitting in a bathroom, sort of just taking some photos about head height. But yeah, it still needs some work. But obviously, if you have done this a few times and you start to get the hang of the settings, then obviously it's going to be a better output. And also, this was only about 40 to 50 photos. So if you wanted to get another output or better output, maybe 100, 200 if you could. But again, that's for AWS to solve. Oh yeah.
I was bored at home, so I decided to take a bit of hand capture of my didgeridoo that I have hanging up on my wall, and I managed to actually get some really high quality images. You can see the 3D models like reasonably detailed. So I just wanted to bring this up to highlight that you can have like as high quality like images as you like. So if you had a very close flyover with a drone, you might be able to get like an individual blade of grass. That's about it from that.
Yeah.
Now the exciting stuff, cost breakdowns.
So yeah, from all the projects we ran in March, this is a pretty brief overview of what sort of cost us. So we ended up going with an on-demand price here at $1.20. And we used it for a total of 15 hours, which came out to be about $18.30, $38. But this ran about 16, 17 projects, quite a few failed projects as well. So if you're looking at something for, I guess, an everyday person, this actually works quite well. You're not paying a ridiculous service fee. And I guess anybody can use it. Anybody can start their own AWS account and do all of this. Obviously, OpenDroneMap is open source. And we've also got just another, I guess, a nice visual breakdown of the cost. So these are actually basically all of the projects we ran. And yeah, there's about 16 there. There's also Vegemite, I don't know. But yeah, I think that was our whole thing. And then there's some projections. So I guess if you're doing a fast orthophoto job, the number of photos will obviously impact the time it takes for this to run, but then also the cost. So for about 200 photos, it'd take about 15, 20 minutes, but it only costs you about 30 cents. So it's actually very, very cheap to run. And if you want a 3D model, again, 100 photos for about 30 minutes, about 60 cents. So it really varies on the amount of photos you have and the work you're wanting it to do, but it is quite cost effective. Thank you. Any questions?
That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Do you consider the spatial resolution of every image to estimate the cost?
I don't know that it takes that into account. Don't know. Tim?
I think most of the photos we would have used would have been about like 4 to 8 megabytes each. So decent resolution, but not if you have like a really crazy detailed camera drone. But that would definitely bump the processing time up slightly. But usually the number of images or photos is the most consistent. It seems pretty linear as well, like scaling wise, like 200 photos to 400 photos, roughly double the processing time.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions while we're here? Yes.
Yeah, I did a couple of a web ODM project a year or two ago. And one of the issues I had is because your GPS is working in WGS84, I had a big problem and I had to try and reproject it into GDA 994. There didn't seem to be a way to do it without actually re-registering my image. So I just wondered if you had any comments on that.
No, I think basically everything we did ran pretty well, especially with the I guess the drone map that we did have. I didn't really have to do anything too much to it, but I guess we'll have some work coming up. I think that's the whole plan of getting to use this software. Yeah, I think that's the whole plan of getting to use something like this, is that we will use it as in the workspace. So
Yeah,
I guess.
See how you get on, because I had to convert my local ground control points to WGS 84 coordinates for it to work properly. Otherwise, it wouldn't register in the right place.
Right.
We may come across that issue.
Tim.
Yeah,
Tim.
like prediction-wise, you're probably going to be stuck with whatever OpenDroneMap's got, because they're not from here, from Australia. I'm
Yeah.
guessing it's probably WGS 84 as like the default.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there'd probably be some kind of extensibility to provide your own.
He knows.
You can just reproject it, you can reproject it to the data.
Like a manual step before.
Well, yeah, it should be Python, like I've got metadata, reproject from Git and stuff back in and then.
Yeah, run your job.
Yeah, I've tried a few various things that didn't work, but anyway.
Well, I haven't done it, I just,
So, what are you guys using Docker desktop?
Tim.
The requirement for Docker Desktop is just an easier way to run OpenDroneMap. So they've provided and published a Docker image.
Okay.
And part of the steps when you deploy to AWS is we grab the latest image of Docker of OpenDroneMap, and that gets deployed using Docker Desktop into a service in AWS called ECR, Elastic Container Registry. And that's what that EC2 instance, it's probably easy if you go back to the architecture diagram. Back a bit.
Oh yeah, there's a few.
I'll just like point it because it's easier.
Come on, Tim. Might as well be your presentation.
So when you deploy from your dev environment, which would be like your computer, Docker Desktop's going to bring that Docker image that you've pulled from OpenDroneMap. It's going to pass it into this service right here, ECR. That gets orchestrated by ECS onto an EC2 instance, which is like really big and massively sized. So it's obviously a lot more powerful than your client desktop over here. And like that's the main magic of this solution. Like if any of you guys have used OpenDroneMap before, or like Web ODM, because it's a lot more accessible because it's got a GUI. If you tried to run that on your laptop before, like it'll tank it, right? It'll destroy it. Especially if you're trying to run that Centenary Park job we had. That was about 1,500 photos. Normally the hard constraint is RAM or memory, because it has to run like one process, one job. So 1,500 photos, I think that machine we spin up has about 128 gigs of RAM. So obviously, compared to your local desktop, which is probably 16, 32 at max, you can do a lot more. It's a lot more powerful. And the cool thing as well is like you can spin up as many jobs as you want at the same time in parallel. AWS will take care of that, so there's none of that waiting for a job to finish before you run a new one. No waiting 8 to 24 hours for a job to finish. Just let AWS do the heavy lifting for you. Is the whole idea. Yeah.
Web ODM, you can pay them for a similar service.
Yeah, ODM Lightning.
I assume
Yes.
this is cheaper.
Well, it would depend. I think ODM Lightning's pretty fair because they also have a consumption model. So you pay just for like the time, or I think it's not necessarily time, it might be the amount of images you process. Or there's like an on-demand rate you pay them. I guess this is a way for you to get more control. I also know there's a limit on ODM Lightning. I think it's 2,000 photos, but you can't do any more than that. So this you can do as much as you want. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, one more.
Last one, how do you go with ground control points?
Well, that specific one we had
Yeah,
none.
how do you even tell the pipeline where they are?
Yeah, it's provided as a separate file. So in this particular workflow, you'll put it into that project bucket in S3. And then I believe they're in the script, it's written in a way that will check for ground control points. Let's see if that's present. If not, we'll proceed without. But you can definitely provide that and have it as part of your processing pipeline.
Awesome. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. One more.
Oh, another one.
How are you able to attach the ground control points to the images if you don't have
Like an interface to do it.
yeah.
Yeah, so like you just have it inside this bucket or this container, and when the job gets spun up, all of those assets get copied across to the instance that runs the job, and that has the programming within it to pick up those files, whatever you've provided, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but for example, let's say you are working here in Australia and you are getting the data from here to Australia,
Yeah.
and your pictures are still in the, and you just say the name is WG74 1994, I think.
Yeah.
So how would that information match to the processing?
Well, I think there's a file you provide that's like a definition.
Like a projection file, like
Yeah.
text file.
Like because I haven't got the personal experience running it, I can't speak to specifically, but I'm sure they've got an allowance for it, and that's probably how it's done. So like a separate file where you define
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah, if you're running web ODM, there's a ground control section in it, so you can pick your ground control points on each photo.
Yeah, that's my question, because you have the visual interface to it, but my question is, how do you do it on the
When it's command line.
in an automatic way?
Yeah, there must be some kind of file definition you provide. So it's probably more technical and more difficult to do,
Sounds
but
like-
it'll definitely be a consideration.
Sounds like a great topic over pizza and beers.
Yeah.
So let's thank these guys for a great talk.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, nice one. That's super interesting, and it's an open source project. So kudos to you guys and to Wanyama for doing that.
Yeah.